Greetings. This is the Mega Mad Cat coming back again. I do apologize for the delay. I meant to get this put together earlier. Work and other factors got in the way. Sorry about that. That being said, as you can see, I am here today to review Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition. Specifically in this case for the PS4, though I imagine with the Xbox One it's probably similar. That being said, I'm here because, well, I like this game. I really do. Which surprised me because I'd played the previous two and honestly it's been so long and they haven't aged as well as some people think. Yet at the same time, I found myself utterly and totally driven into this game and it hooked me and didn't let go for quite some time. With that being said, let us begin with the review proper. And starting with, well, what else do you start with? Let's do a little bit of an overview so I can tell you all what we're going to be doing today. Now, this is probably one of the biggest named games that came out for the PC in the last several years. A little bit of controversy, a lot of sales, some problems with DRM and auction houses. I can say that the PS4 and Xbox One versions do away with almost all of the original PC game's failures. Now we're going to be talking about some of the core elements here: story, graphics, sound, gameplay, and score. And the score being, of course, my final score for what the game is and whether it's worth your time. That being said, I will also bring up some other factors, in these different areas, but we'll get to that. Still, these are the core things of any game, so we have to discuss them. It's just the way it is. Now, Diablo 3 is the third in the legendary Diablo series from Blizzard Entertainment, and was originally released on PC with a host of features that were, some were good, some were not so good, some were derided and mocked and ridiculed like nobody's business. We'll get to all that. But at its core, it's an overhead dungeon crawling loot spectacular. It's a game about exploring worlds, killing monsters, stealing their crap, and becoming God. Or close to it. And I mean that in almost the most literal sense. Now, one of the things I will discuss is the aesthetics of the game, because that was a point of severe contention when the game was originally revealed. Not when it was released, but when it was revealed. I'll also discuss a few other things, such as, the auction house and everything in the gameplay section, but only in such that they are no longer a problem in the series as far as the console versions are concerned. And make no mistake, this is specifically about the console version. I have touched the PC version, and in my opinion, it's actually the weaker version of the game. And I will give my reasoning for it, but we'll get there. Now, firstly, story. The story begins with our old buddy, or way old buddy, Deckard Cain, narrating a prophecy about the end of existence. The first sign appears in the heavens, blah, 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 da-da-da. Whatever you want to call it. Basically, he's telling this story about how, at the end of time, justice will fall from the heavens, and the dead will rise, and it will be Armageddon, and all kinds of chaos and destruction and war, and yada yada. Everything will suck ass. Put quite simply, Diablo 3 is the story of one man's quest, in both his life and his death, to prevent the end of the world. Which is honestly kind of awesome, and Deckard Cain is cool as hell, even being old as shit. Now, that being said, this game's story is well narrated and features a variety of voice talents, both in the player characters and in the NPCs. Most notably Deckard Cain, his granddaughter Leah, who is notably voiced by Jennifer Hill, there she is, and who does a very good job of portraying a much less, it's not shepherd, if you will. It's not femshep. She's a much more grounded, much more rational character, there's a much more of a broken bird epic to her than anything else. Deckard Cain, the grand old man himself, has been around since the first game and may well be the heart of the story, and has been the heart of the series for years. But I admire him for just the fact that he's stuck it around for, however long he's been in a world where everything is trying to kill you. But basically, the story starts with this cutscene explaining how Deckard Cain gets embroiled in this supposed end of times malarkey, which turns out to be true, just nobody believes him at the time.
Leave it, Uncle.
But it's really more about Leah and her connection to it, and there won't be any major spoilers about it, though admittedly, at this point, if you're not familiar with the story of this game, you haven't been paying attention. Or you haven't played it, just outright haven't played it. But basically, her and Deckard and a series of other characters are the main core. Now, when the game begins, you pick your character, you pick your class, which you can see them listed here, but I will go into detail later. But each class has its own strengths, own weaknesses, and own abilities. You then name the class, the character you want to play as, which is, admittedly, they never say the name of the game. They just refer to you as, you know, whoever you are. They call you the Chosen One, or later on another name that you find out about later. So basically, you pick your character, you give them a name, you decide what you want to call them, and then you start the game with their introduction cinematic that explains the background for each character. And each character admittedly has a different background, which informs both their personality, their voice work, and a few other things. You can also pick male or female for any class. You always start off back as a level 1 chump, or in this case a level 1 barbarian, barely wearing any clothes, who looks like she could rip your arms off if you annoyed her. And that's the thing, each character has their own personality, their own traits, their own voice work on both sides. They have unique voices, male and female, of course, and the personalities for both are a little different, but they're mostly the same. And then basically you can choose your settings, change different effects for the game itself, including damage numbers, healing numbers, you know, multiplayer, all kinds of different information. Once you're ready, you start, and the game will begin with whatever character you've decided to play giving a narration about their backstory, which isn't a bad thing. The game is knee-deep in lore, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can also play a variety of difficulty levels, including everything up to Torment. The higher the difficulty, the more dangerous the enemies and the better equipment and levels you will need. And it's important to note that just levels is not enough in this game. You have to have good equipment as well. So keep that in mind if you're going to play. It's as much about leveling your character as finding good loot. Now, for each character, you'll get one of these, which, you know, is different for each character, but they all basically deal with the character pursuing either their own glory, their own power, or some other thing that's driving them forward to be a hero. In the case of the barbarian, it's boredom. You know, she's like, you know, I beat pretty much everything that crosses my path. What else is there for me? And eventually, in the case of all the characters, it leads them back to Tristram and the old cathedral once more. Which, for fans of the game series as a whole, you know what this cathedral means, you know what it represents, and you know how it's related to the game. For newcomers, they'll give you enough story to make sure you understand. Don't worry. Now, moving on to the other two areas of the game that are right from the get-go, you'll notice the graphics and the sound. Graphically, the game is a departure from its previous entries. They were much more gritty, dark, down, dirty. You know, it's funny that a lot of people attribute games like Call of Duty and Battlefield to the whole realism brown aesthetic. Truth is, Diablo had them beat by a decade or more. Now, Diablo admittedly was set in a medieval era with very bad stuff going on, so it does make some sense. But Diablo 3 has skewed that, and that's where the aesthetics come in. You'll notice right away, there's a much greater palette of color here. Lighting, shadow, trees. And while Tristram itself is rather dark and brooding, you'll see through other video content I have here that the game features a massive amount of variety, from a blindingly bright and super hot desert to the walls of an ancient keep on the rim of an exploding mountain, to the depths of hell and the high heavens themselves. Everything about this game is unique and gives a great visual style that the other games somewhat lacked because they weren't able to display it with the variety or depth that they would have liked at the time. And let's face it, they were well done for their era, but at the same time, they were running on technology that was, top of the line for its era, but nothing compared to what we have now. So, that being said, now you can see here that the character starts out basically with just the bare minimum of equipment. An axe, maybe a few odds and ends, some powers, a weapon or two, but as a general rule, you start out as a nothing, as a nobody, as an absolute weak sauce. And the whole point of the game is that you constantly evolve and grow stronger and grow more powerful and learn about the world. You speak to people, you gain insight, you talk to different characters, you find out more story. They will do, a lot of different things throughout the game to, learn as much as you like. You can also do stuff like sharing weaponry and equipment between different characters using a built-in stash system. And those who actually bought the compilation edition usually get some basic free gifts to start them off. So it's not a bad deal. Still, that's what it is. You start out with the basic stuff, you start out in a basic land, and you roam the world seeing all that it could offer. Now, this game also has a unique feature. It's not just one game. It's both the original Diablo 3, and it also includes the Reaper of Souls expansion. So you're getting double the gameplay, practically. The Reaper of Souls adds at least 6 hours of extra content, and a new class that you can play as. And as you can see here, as I was mentioning in my graphics area, there's a lot of variety. Here you have the fire-torn city, and the bright visual effects of my wizard's magic, which is awesome, by the way. My favorite class, hands down, is the wizard. I will admit the others are cool and they all have their own unique features, but the wizard is still my favorite, partially because his voice actor is Crispin Freeman, and it's awesome to hear Alucard playing the wizard. It's not that much of a departure from his character in Hellsing, to be all honest. But anyway, the thing that separates Diablo from other games is that you play as a variety of classes, and you can see them here. The Barbarian is a melee powerhouse, just a brute force masher. Take a hammer, take an axe, take a broadsword, and just cut and pound your way through your opponents. Now the Witch Doctor is a master of poison, pets, and other very dark magics. Yet despite that, he's not actually a dark person himself. He's probably the most positive of the characters, but he wields some of the most dark and evil-looking magic. The Wizard is the quintessential glass cannon. He is literally power incarnate, but he can barely take a hit. The Monk is the martial arts and spiritual powerhouse, and let's face it, it's a monk. You get what you pay for. Demon Hunter uses bows, arrows, projectiles, traps, and other sorts of trickery to destroy her enemies or lure them to their destruction. And the Crusader is a holy warrior with unbelievably brutal weaponry, including flails, massive hammers, and holy strength of a unique style. It makes him an interesting character, a sort of counterpart to the Barbarian. Rather than pure brute force, he's a combination of strategy, defense, and sheer crushing power. So, a little bit more variety to that character. I still hold that my favorite is the Wizard, simply because once you get some of his powers, he is just unbelievably brutal. But, to each their own. There's 6 characters to try. Give them all a try, see what you like. You'll find that there's plenty of variety. In fact, I thought I'd show a little of that with the Witch Doctor. Here is the Witch Doctor, with a small army of pets backing, including spectral dogs, zombie dogs, a giant zombie, and all kinds of other stuff. I can also shoot flaming or poisonous bats. I can use different techniques or abilities, or I can rain acid upon my opponents and melt them into slag. It's really interesting because each character has a unique fighting style. In a way, the Witch Doctor is a weird combination. He's sort of what you get when you cross a necromancer with a wizard, except that instead of using fireballs, lightning, and lasers, he's using spiders, bats, zombie dogs, and acid. Which I can't say is a bad thing. I mean, next to the wizard, he's actually one of my favorites, simply because of how unique his fighting style is. I mean, he's hurling spiders at you. Hurling jars of spiders. Really? How could you not like that? That being said, and all things being fair, each character is going to play differently, and you have to learn how each one functions. the Witch Doctor is a very good long-range trap player. He'll literally just hurl traps at the zombies and create, walls of dogs and spiders and monsters, and basically, prevent you from getting anywhere near him because you're too busy fighting off his legion of undead horrors. Now, that being said, that means that when you do get an enemy up close, they will brutalize you. And I've lost my Witch Doctor in combat more than once to underestimating my enemy and getting trapped, by a small cadre of them and pinned down and beaten to death. So each character must be learned and mastered. Most difficult to master is probably going to be the Demon Hunter. Powerful, but very difficult to master. The easiest to master is probably the Barbarian or the Monk, because they're literally just, with the Monk, it's literally just learning the moves and how to use them effectively. With the Barbarian, once you get Whirlwind, pretty much everything is redundant. Now, that being said, it's not that there is a lack of strategy, it's just that, some characters perform better in certain circumstances, and given the amount of melee that goes on in this game, the Barbarian just has a natural advantage for that kind of stuff. Anyway, like I said, each class is unique, and playing them is a very interesting experience and a lot of fun. You get all kinds of loot and equipment that you can use to power up and enhance your character. Different loot, such as legendaries or specialty weapons that only certain classes can use, is very important. So keep that in mind. Now, on to the score. And I say this, with all honesty, I will be the first to admit that the previous two games did not age well. They're still fun to play, and I actually give them a lot of credit for being as good as they are, but there's a certain sense to them that they've gotten outdated as time went on. Classic or not, they just don't have the appeal they used to. This game, I think, is going to be appealing for a long time to come. Aesthetically, I think they have the right style. It's colorful, it's vibrant, it has a lot of activity, and yet everything is clearly defined. You can see everything you're looking at. It's very rare that I get confused or lose track of my opponent. Also, there's some good multiplayer in there, especially for co-op, which I think is great. I think co-op is an underrated feature in a lot of games these days, and I think this game's co-op is some of the best out there. Still feel that there's, they could have done more with it, and admittedly I'm biased, but I still enjoyed the heck out of this game. So much so that I've probably put about, 80 hours into it, give or take. I don't know if I could, if that number's accurate, because I know some characters have more than others. But every character has had at least 15 hours of play donated to them, but dedicated to them, as it were. I highly recommend this game. Fans of the Diablo series, you're going to love it. Even if the aesthetics are a little bit different, you're going to find that they work extremely well and look great. Fans of dungeon crawlers, you're going to love it. It's awesome. Fans of action games or loot games are going to love it too. I can't really see anybody not enjoying it unless you just hate the whole isometric thing, which admittedly that could be a possibility, but yeah, I don't see that as being too big of an issue. I still say if you haven't played it, at least give it a try. Get it from Gamefly, see how you like it. If you wind up not liking it, you can always return it or whatever. If you do like it, you can buy it. But at the end of the day, this game fixes all the problems that the PC had. No auction house, no bullcrap DRM. It's just an awesome game made better by the removal of unwanted junk. And that's, I know some people are going to argue, but that's how I feel about that. In the end of the day, I still feel that a lot of people are going to say, oh, PC Master Race, it was always better on PC. No. The moment they created a control scheme that worked for the PS4, that argument went out the window. This game works better on the PS4 than it ever did on the PC. I'm sorry, but that is the way it is. You may disagree, and I understand if you do. But at the end of the day, I still feel the PS4 is the better version. And anyone who owns a PS4 or an Xbox One should get this game immediately. Again, this is the Mega Mad Cat, and that's my review. If you like it, feel free to like and subscribe. If not, let me know what you didn't like. I'll see you all next time when I do some live stream. Well, not live stream, but when I do some stream stuff of Hyrule Warriors. So I will see you then, folks. Bye.